So you already had that experience, so that kind of helped you navigate and land the role that you have right now. What advice would you give for a person who's just starting off, or say right out of college, and they're trying to get into these roles?
Yeah, my advice to them would be first is to understand what kind of role you're really interested in. And that understanding will only come if you talk to like a lot of people. So when people say network a lot, um, every faculty member that you have ever met would always say finance mein you have to network a lot. And that is true. So you network a lot, you try to understand what they do, and then try to analyze if that excites you. If that is exciting for you, basically, if you keep on talking to people, there'll be 3 or 4 fields that you will find really exciting. And those 3 or 4 fields could be, as in, you can talk more to people who are actually working in those 3 or 4 fields. I feel just talking and networking with a lot of people helps you. And then reading, there's so much material available on internet. So, well, yeah, not really a lot, but yeah, some material is available on quantitative research as well. So yes, you can read that. You can read a lot of blogs that are available, and that will really help you understand, yeah, where you want to work and what you want to work as.
That's wonderful. What about internship? Like, do they play an important role? And what if a person doesn't get an internship? What should their strategy be
Okay.
like, in your opinion?
So I would be lying if I say internships do not play a role. Internships play the biggest role. They play an absolutely huge amount of role in your job search. Basically, from what I have seen, generally people get placed in the same kind of jobs as their previous internship. So internships play a very big role. Having said that, it is not the end all scenario if you do not get an internship. If you do not get an internship in that summer, try to do like a research project with a faculty member, which is more practical than theoretical. Yeah. And that experience will also be really, really helpful. Just try to make sure that. So, from my experience, what I did was even all my college projects were all about alpha research because that is exactly what I wanted to do. So every project that was given to me during my every project or assignment that was given to me during my MFE was all about finding an alpha signal, and I think that sets you apart, right? You building your resume says it all. That this is exactly what you're doing. You have been very passionate about it. So every project, every assignment is all about finding alpha signal. So yeah.
There's so many specialization areas in quantitative finance. Um, how does one choose a specialization if they have a choice in this market? And how do they understand what is the best fit for them?
Okay. Again, finding the best fit is generally talking to like a lot of people and then analyzing what kind of role excites you. Like I said in one of the previous answers, the next thing, yeah, so quantitative research generally is a broad category. For example, computer science, computer engineer or software engineer is a broad category. You can be a back-end engineer or you can be a front-end engineer or a database engineer and things like that. So as a quantitative researcher, there are 5 fields. One is being an alpha researcher, which is basically finding signals or patterns which will help you predict the stock returns. And that you can use to buy or sell stocks, for example, in equity space. That is alpha research. Then there is a quantitative researcher who works on pricing analytics. So basically, you will work on pricing models. You will work on either building a new model for one kind of product, or you will work on improving something that has already been built. So that's the next kind of quantitative research. The third is a quantitative risk modeler or a risk researcher, where in the sell side space, you will probably be working on, just analyzing the risk of the entire bank. On the buy side, you will look at the entire portfolio of the firm and try to minimize the risk, basically, and work on portfolio optimization so that you're minimizing risk. So that's the third kind. I think the fourth kind, I believe. And and then there's also people who basically are working on building tools. So that is more of quantitative analytics. You're building tools for day-to-day activities, for trading desks, to basically help the traders analyze how much trade they did, how much money they made, and stuff like that. Yeah. So those are different kinds of skills that you can work on as a quantitative researcher. And it is up to you to understand what interests you more. And
Yeah, I think that's a great insight. It's like really important to know the different options that are available for people to kind of navigate and understand what is the best fit and maybe, build a portfolio accordingly. So my next question is, um, if I were to ask you what are the top three
yeah,
skills that are a must for a quant
yes,
researcher that they should really hone while they're working on their projects or the
yeah.
course, what would you say? What are the top three skills?
Okay, fundamentally, I believe probability is one of the things that you should completely understand. The fundamentals should be very clear for probability. The second thing that I feel as a quantitative researcher you should really be honing is econometrics. That is the basic of everything that you do as an alpha researcher. So econometrics is something that I believe everybody should hold. And as in basically, if you work on those fundamental skills, machine learning problems and basically they're all an extension of econometrics, right? So your fundamentals have to be really, really solid. So econometrics is my next thing. Then the third thing I believe is just persistence. Just keep applying because there are a lot of jobs and there are a lot more applicants applying. So the persistence that you have to show to keep on applying, and even if you're not really getting an interview back, you have to keep your head down and keep applying. Persistence is really important. Yeah. That being said, I'll add one more. I believe finance knowledge also is something you should work on. So, generally people say finance knowledge is, it's not mandatory, it's preferred, but it's not mandatory. I believe if you do not understand what you're working on, you'll never be able to find a pattern in that. And it is all about pattern recognition, right? So your financial knowledge should be at least a little, if you do not know everything, you should know some things. Yeah.
Right. I think that's really a great advice. And would you recommend that people take up certifications like CFA, FRM to kind of get that knowledge, or do you think of basic coursework and certifications on Coursera and such platforms work?
Okay, so I did some certifications on Coursera before joining the course, and I believe that helped me. Just because I could understand what was coming in the future, that really helped me.
Right.
As an MFE student, you do not have enough time to start from the scratch, right? You have to have some level of fundamental knowledge and then you can build on it. Certifications on Coursera at your speed, I believe, is a good thing to do. Then FRM, if you want a risk role, FRM might help you. I haven't really seen like a lot of FRM people here in the States, but I know a lot of people back home in India do FRM certifications. So I have never done it, but I believe that will set you apart if you want to be, say, a quantitative risk modeler or a quantitative risk researcher. Then then coming to CFA, CFA I think is something. So I did my undergrad in finance, so I had that level of knowledge that generally comes from CFA level 1 and level 2. But if you have no knowledge, I think CFA sets you apart from other people who are also doing MFE because it gives you some fundamental financial knowledge. Yeah. So, and a lot of people have CFA here, so it has like a lot of value here as well. Yeah.
I think there's also another common question that we keep hearing. Does MFP or program like QCF, quantitative computational finance programs that we see across are really important to break into quant research, or can anyone with a engineering background or operations research background break into quant research? So what are your opinions on that?
Okay, so that's a great question. I was struggling through the same question for a very long time in my career. I tried to break into quantitative research when I was in London as well. From my experience, people who do not have an MFA, they have a very hard way of breaking into, it becomes very, very hard for them to break into, say, quant research role. Basically, having said that, I know of one person in my entire maybe 200, 300 people whom I know did MFE who broke into quantitative or who's working as a quantitative researcher without doing an MFE program. Generally, these quant researchers or the firms who are basically employing these quantitative researchers, they're generally looking for PhD people, but the next best thing is an MFE student, right? So yeah, so I believe MFE is important, but if you are an exceptional candidate, yes, you can break into anything. And regarding certifications, I have one more point that I would want to add. I believe certifications are not necessary condition; they're good to have. But when you say that you are an MFE candidate or an MFE student, the interviewer exactly knows that you have all the fundamentals covered of all the four subjects that are involved in MFE. So that is the difference. Just going back to my last question, I said CFA becomes important if you want some fundamental finance knowledge, but finance is something that comes say fourth, like I mentioned. The other quantitative skills are very, very important. So CFA, good to have, it's not necessary. Yeah. So certifications cannot substitute MFE degree. But yes, you can not do a CFA and still do an MFE, and that will be good too. Yeah. Just one more point to the last.
Go ahead. I'd like to. Right.
Yeah, so basically, I just wanted to say that if you do not have that fundamental finance knowledge, then CFA is good to have. If you have that fundamental knowledge of finance, then I don't believe you need to do a CFA certification again. Yeah, for example, I'm not doing it. I did my level 1 and then I stopped. I'm not doing it.
Right. I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So another question is, do you really require lead code for these roles?
Yes. Depends on the roles that you're looking for. So if you go into, say, a hedge fund like Two Sigma or say Citadel or HRT, there you're required to code a lot. There you do not have to know like a lot of finance. You have to code a lot. Even Akuna for that matter. And if you like coding that much, then you should definitely apply for those roles. Depends on the role that you're looking for. If you're looking for such roles, you should definitely do lead code. Lead code medians are generally good enough. And then if you're looking for, so I did not want to do a very coding heavy job. So I did not practice lead code a lot. I did those 75 questions that are basic, the basic 75 questions that are on lead code. Other than that, I did not really do a lot of lead code.
Okay. I think that makes sense. Like you said, it depends on the role. and if the role demands it, like a quant
Yeah.
trader, you definitely have to have
Yes.
a coding
Yes.
background, a really good competitive coding
Yes.
background. But for quant research and the other roles, it depends exactly.
Yeah, it depends on the firm. As a quantitative researcher, if you're working for someone like, yeah, like I mentioned, the names of the firms that I mentioned, there you will need good coding skills.
So I think that comes to my next question. I think we've already, discussed this in terms of strategy for applying to quant research. Like what should be your goals? And one of the things that you told me is that you need to start building that kind of projects, either through research or through your internships, and then actually showcase that you're passionate about, the field, and then you start working on it rigorously and then consistently, so that you make your way through the interviews and showcase that you're passionate about.
Right. So, for my interview prep, the first thing that I tell everyone I talk to is know your resume inside out. Whatever is written on your resume, basically, if say you've done a project and you've employed one model and not employed the other model, you should know exactly why you applied the first model and why you did not apply the next model. And this is just basic generic questions that interviewers ask everyone. And as someone who's recently conducted mock interviews, I have seen that people are not really very well aware of their resume. And that is one thing. As in, if you've written something that you know this, then you have to have the best kind of grasp that you can have on that subject matter. So I believe that is where everyone should start, just knowing your resume inside out. The next is doing every question in the Green Book. So the Green Book called A Practical Guide to Quantitative Finance, that is absolutely necessary. That's absolute necessity. Basically, there are these questions which interviewers will ask you definitely from Green Book. So you should do that over at least 3 or 4 times till you know those concepts. Other than that, if you're building a profile as a quantitative trader or as a quantitative researcher in, say, companies like Two Sigma and stuff, you should also do lead code. Lead code, yeah. And just basic assumptions you should be very well aware of. So econometric assumptions, what is OLS, why do we do OLS, and what are the basic 6-7 assumptions of OLS. That is absolute necessity. And I think interviewing is also like it's a skill, giving an interview. You can make sure that your interviewer asks you exactly what you want them to ask you. So, if, for example, they're asking you something, you can give them an example of this is exactly what I've done, and or the alternative could be this, which I have done, and they'll start questioning you about that stuff. So basically, the interviewer goes exactly in the direction that you want him to go, him/her to go, and they do not even realize that you wanted that interviewer to go there. And once that interviewer reaches to that point where you exactly wanted that interviewer to go to, then it becomes like a quick walk.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think, can you shed some light from the perspective of an interviewer? What is that they really look for in a candidate? Like in terms of the personality or in terms of the mindset, is there specific skills that they pick on apart from the technical skills that they spoke about?
Yes. So one thing that they really look at is if you can talk and express yourself, if you can communicate clearly. That is one thing. And then sometimes the interviewer also is okay with you saying, I don't know, but I am okay to learn. Basically, understanding where your weaknesses are, that also helps sometimes. I am not saying it helps every time, it helps sometimes. So, just not being very arrogant about knowing everything. Yeah, so that is also something that people look at. And your curiosity to learn more. Yeah. So, yeah, those are the 3-4 things apart from the technical things that people look at generally.
So we've really witnessed what AI is doing to the world right now. Such advancements and such impact on people. What is the role AI is playing in finance, and what are the possibilities that you see, and what are your tips for people who are working in this area?
Okay. For AI in finance, I believe it's very formative years. It is very formative years. So generally, it's something which is good to know, but you probably not implement something for a very long time. Generally, clients are not very okay with a black box making a lot of decisions. So right now, I haven't seen like a lot of people implementing these strategies which are AI driven. But obviously, there are a few firms who are doing AI strategies as well. But these are really, really few. So it hasn't come to a stage where everybody is running after AI, but people have started picking it up. And basically, as someone who works in any trade, is to make sure that you are upgrading your skill on an everyday basis. So this is a skill which is good to have right now, will probably become really necessary 10 years down the line. So it's good to start now.
That makes a lot of sense. Before I wrap up this conversation, if I were to ask you, what is your mantra, your daily mantra that you practice, what would that be?
Well, right now it's just putting your head down and working and gaining as much knowledge as you can, so that once I progress in my career, I have the understanding and knowledge of taking those trades, making those trade choices. You have to have a certain level of confidence once you start making those trades, and that can only happen if you have that knowledge. And right now, I'm just keeping my head down, working hard to gain that knowledge, I believe. And then the next thing that I always tell people, and I think I've also told you, Vaishnavi, the last time we discussed, work on your alpha. I believe you should know what your strengths are, and you should always, you know, try to distinguish yourself from the others. There should be one or two techniques or two things that you're really good at that puts you at a better spot than everybody else in the market. So you should definitely hone one skill that sets you apart than the rest of the people. Be it communication, be it the technical skills, be it one model, be it understanding the data well. Anything that puts you or sets you apart from everybody else in the market.
I really love the fact and the phrase, what is your alpha? Figuring out your alpha is the most important.
To figure out your alpha. That is exactly what I do every time I buy a new book, a notebook. My first question always is, what is my alpha? Because you have to understand what is setting you apart right now, and then you can work on other things, the weaknesses as well as the strengths. Yeah.
Right. It's very important to know that, I believe. And such a nice phrase to combine, the finance knowledge and philosophy and figuring out what my alpha is. It's very lovely to think of that.
I think I'm obsessed with finance.
So I think that's the way to go if you want to try the obsession. It was wonderful talking to you, Sukriti. It was very enlightening, and I'm sure people who are going to watch this are going to gain a lot of skills, a lot of information, a lot of knowledge that you might be missing on or still figuring out to get into their database. I'm very lucky to have had a conversation with you. And this is a very amazing experience for me.
Thank you for calling me. This was and I must appreciate the effort that you guys are putting in to build a platform which can be used by people where you're trying to break down the gates that have been put in place for people entering into this field. So I really appreciate that. And then for anybody watching, I am just a LinkedIn message away. Just shoot out a message, and I try to reply to everyone. I might not reply instantaneously, but I will get back to you. Yeah, that's it.
That's really, really kind of you, and I love the session. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.